and good day to everyone. Wishing you a beautiful day ahead. So joining here with us today is Simon Haigh. He's globally well known as Growth Strategist for business, leadership, brain to personal. So hello, Simon.
Hello.
Hello, it's great. It's great to see you. I'm here in Ireland. I'm a long way from you, but we're very close. We're very close. We're looking at each other. It's wonderful to be here.
So blessed that we can connect virtually, and appreciate a lot that you can spend your time with us in this insight sharing sections. Today, as you know, is to talk about you, your dream, your passions, your works, and it's going to be a very beautiful, inspirational story for us and the audience here. So to kick it off, Yaya, would you please share with us a bit about yourself, and please bring us back all the way to the journeys, how you started all of these Greek works.
Okay, so I'm referred to, so it's a privilege to be here. I'm referred to as the growth strategist, and I help, basically I do two things. I help organizations achieve their purpose, and I help leaders achieve their authentic potential. And for me, you can't do one without the other. You can't grow a business unless the people are happy, and you need happy people to grow a business. So that's the work I do. And I do it through 4 phases. I look at the mindset of leaders and how resilient they are, their awareness, their emotional stability, because we have to start with what's going on in our heads, okay? And then once I've looked at that, I look at their leadership capabilities, how honest they are, how assertive, how good they are at influencing. Then I look at their business capabilities. Are they looking for the right opportunities? Do they have the right strategy? And then finally, their brand growth. So having worked on their mindset, leadership, and business, what do they need to do to resonate, to put their brand out there? Because if you think about it, really there's only 3 aspects of business, and I call them the 3 R's of business. And if you can imagine a triangle, at the top you have revenue, the bottom left you have risk, and the bottom right you have reputation. So revenue, risk, and reputation. That's all business is. That's all it is. So that's the work I do. How I got to this place is a long story. I started life in the UK. I became a lawyer. I was a lawyer for 13 years. I was a technology lawyer. I also worked for a couple of American multinationals. And it was during that time that I realized that what I was good at was helping connect people to get business results, help people to improve their communication, to close deals. And I was also good at closing deals as well. So, and I realized that really what business is about communication. And what communication is about, it's about connection. It's not really language, you know. I could talk a different language to you, and we could still be on the same wavelength because of the way we smile together, or our eyes, or we nod together. So those connection things are really important. And that's the work that I do. I've lived in the UK, I've lived in Australia, I've lived in Ireland, I spent time in America, I spent time in Poland. But that's the short version of a very long story.
First question, Simon, is from technology lawyers all the way to human connectivities. What is that your calling or something happening to make that the hard decisions?
It is my calling, and the calling came about because I saw so many breakages in companies, you know, so many issues, so much waste, so many silos, so much lack of connection on the one hand. And then I saw that so many people feel they lack confidence, they feel disenfranchised, they have imposter syndrome. They don't really know what their potential is, and they don't really know what opportunities to go for. So I thought, why don't I try and study both aspects and see if I can bring them together to help accelerate business and accelerate people at the same time. And really that is my passion. My passion is, how do I help people understand what their potential is? Because we all have potential, right? But nobody tells us at school what our potential is. Our parents can't tell us. Our bosses don't tell us. So my work is helping my clients to understand what is it within them that allows them to move forward. And then the second thing is, once I've worked on their potential, is what can they realistically look for in terms of opportunity? There's so much opportunity, but nobody teaches us our potential and what opportunity is rightfully ours. So that's the work I do. And that is the calling for the rest of my career.
Simon, I will bring you all the way back further in your time. Okay, so when you were a little young boy, what did you dream of one day you're gonna become?
That's a funny question because I was a bit unusual because most boys want to become a fireman or a my brother wanted to be a Canadian mounted policeman. You know the Canadian Mounties, and so or a train driver. But I saw a program when I was 7. It was an American program called Paper Chase, and it was about law students studying law, right, at the age of 7, right? And something in me said, that looks really interesting. The pursuit of knowledge, the desire to keep improving your knowledge. So I'm almost embarrassed to say that from the age of 7, I wanted to be a lawyer. and then eventually, at the age of maybe 40, I stopped being a lawyer. But yeah, I had a dream to be a lawyer, which is unusual for a small child.
So when you were at 7 and you said that you would want to be a lawyer, what did the people next to you tell you? Or maybe nobody say anything?
They didn't really say much because I was actually the first person in my family to go to university. Okay, so so I don't think I was never discouraged. My family never discouraged me. You know, my parents supported me, but I don't think they really realized the power of what I was thinking, you know, if that makes sense. And I don't think they really realized the potential that was within me, you know, and we all have potential, you know, and so that was an interesting question. Yeah, that nobody discouraged me, but and I don't think I don't remember anybody saying, Simon, you're a dreamer. I've just been allowed to create my own journey, and that's the gift that I've had, and that's the gift that I'm trying to give other people. Is at the end of the day, nobody is going to save any of us. Nobody is going to drive our journeys. It's up to all of us to find our own way in life. So my passion today comes from childhood, but at the time I didn't realize it was my passion.
Simon, it's very interesting because a lot of speakers join into my program and they study in one thing, but then they ended up doing something totally different and make them really good at what they do. It, you know, and you at the age of 7 have a dream of one day become a lawyer. Indeed, study law and then became a lawyer for 13 years, right? You were very successful as a lawyer also, and then you took a leap of faith to change everything. Then we would want to bring you to the point at the years of in your 13 years as a lawyer now, and then back then you realize that things need to change, and then you would there's the calling for you to make the change, but there was also a risk back then, because as a corporate lawyer, at the end of the month, you got the benefit, you got the salary, you got everything, everything stable. And now you get out of that comfort zone, and then you're seeking for something that uncertain. What motivates you back then, and what gave you strength to take that path, Simon?
Well, so I didn't go straight from lawyer to running my own business. Basically, there have been 3 phases of my career. So the first 13 years, I was a lawyer. And then the next 7 years, I moved. I did an MBA, and I ended up becoming a CEO for an American company in Australia. So I went from law into business. But it was in 2013, I was a CEO for an American company, and we kind of agreed that I needed to move on because the business had finished what it was doing at the time. So I took a payout. I actually took a payout at the time, and it gave me an opportunity to stop, to reflect, to think about what I really wanted to do. And this word alignment came into my head, right? Alignment. And I'm really interested in the whole area of alignment. And for me, unless you are to really excel, to really give yourself the best chance in life, personally and professionally, you need to come to a place at some point, and not everybody can, because some people just need to earn money from a job, right? But if you have the luxury, like I did, to take time out, you need to align with the true version of you, what your feelings, your emotions, your desires, your skills. And if you can align that with the work you do, the sky is the limit. And my great mentor, Marshall Goldsmith, the world's #1 leadership thinker, who I've been blessed, has written the foreword to a couple of my books, said to me, I spoke to him 2 years ago, and I said, Marshall, I'm not sure of which direction to take. And he said, Simon, you just need to match your confidence with your capability. And I thought about it, and I've thought about it a lot since, and I've realized it's about being courageous. So this kind of answers your question in a long-winded way. You need to be courageous and you need to be resilient. And looking back, I think I've been blessed because I've always been courageous and I've always been resilient. I didn't know it at the time, but I've been very courageous and very resilient. And I have made mistakes. All humans make mistakes, but I've always had an ability to pick myself up, and I've always had a sense in the distance that everything will be okay. And then I kind of envisage it and work towards it, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. Thank you for saying that. Then I'll ask you a question again. Simon, when you make, when you say that making alignment in your life, right? And then, matching your skill and then matching what you want to do. And then when we do that kind of matching, there's a lot of path that can lead us to, one direction to the next direction, still going to, steer us to where our dreams to be. But then you decided on to a very to become a growth strategist and then excel from that area. So back then, what exercise did you do besides talking to Marshall and then have good reflection times?
So that's an interesting question, because although I'm referred to as the growth strategist today, right? When I started my own coaching, consulting, training business 8 years ago, I wasn't referred to as the growth strategist. My title was expertdealcloser.com, right? Expertdealcloser.com. And because I've written books on deal closing and sales and business development. And so okay. And I think this is really important to say, because life, like business strategy, needs to be flexible. It needs to move with the frequency that you're putting out into the world, what's coming back, how you're feeling, your age, all of these things. Your life is a journey and it changes. And so I started off really writing books about how people close deals and sell better, because that was from my background as a lawyer, right? But what I noticed was the feedback that I was getting from people was when they read the book, How to Be a Better Deal Closer, which is that one there, people said, when I read this book, I thought this would be a boring book about closing deals and sales. But you know the wardrobe in the film, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the children walk into the wardrobe and they go into this land called Narnia. Do you know that story? No. They open a wardrobe and they go into a different world, an imaginary world. And so when people read my book, they realize you're not really talking about deals. You're talking about the human skills that we all need to navigate life. So how do we influence each other? How do we connect with each other? How do we communicate? And all of those things are about growth. So even though I was talking about deal making 8 years ago, I didn't realize, but I was really talking about growth. So life is a journey. It's a journey. And you've got to watch where you're going, and you can fine tune as you go along. I think that's really important.
When you tell me that you were a lawyer, you don't look like a lawyer to me. You look like a very different type of lawyer. So I bet that back then, when you're working as a lawyer, you see things not working properly, and there was a burning desire inside of you every day that want to make a change. What happened to your day back then? Can you share with us, the audience?
That's a very smart question, because regularly people would say to me, Simon, you're too nice to be a lawyer. People would say, you're too nice to be a lawyer. And at the time, it would hurt me. I would think, well, can they see a weakness in me? Do I not look convincing enough? But today, I take that as a compliment, because I struggled intellectually. I loved the law, right? I love being a lawyer because I like the intellectual pursuit. But what really challenged me was, the legal profession, to a large extent, is quite closed. There is, it's quite old-fashioned in a lot of senses. So I kind of rebelled a lot. I was quite disruptive in my thinking. And so I wanted to bring in more collaborative sharing and software tools where partners would share more information. And, I was a chief knowledge officer for a law firm in Australia for a while to help partners and lawyers improve communication. and I improved a lot of things, but I noticed there was a lot of pushback because lawyers basically are their own boss. You know, they might work in a partnership, but they're about themselves. So I found it difficult, I have to say. But I decided that, you know, you can't, there are certain things you can't change from the inside. You know, you have to move outside and work outside. And it's funny, I now work with law firms and help improve their culture, their innovation, their inclusion, their cohesion, their alignment. So I always sensed the law was just a stepping stone to something else. Having said that, having a career in the law has been very, very helpful because when you think about it, everything we think, do, touch, buy is governed by law. So you do need to have that awareness. But yeah, it's a good question. I struggled with that feeling of feeling almost claustrophobic within the legal profession. So I worked outside it.
I'm glad that you get out of that and no longer have that frustration, right? But then, you know,
Yeah.
like you say, it's a great compliment. Back then, you know, it might be seen as something, you know, not good. But then, you know, when you get out and you start seeing it actually becoming the strength and making Simon who you are today. And
Yeah.
yep, Simon, I have a question because when I was young, I'm a dreamer myself too, and I always dream of the world full of great people, wonderful people being together. Because I always believe that as a core human being, we always want to do good things for one another. All right, but then the reality is, you know, it kick in, and we start seeing a world in a different as and you know phase for it, and
Yeah.
connectivity seems to be an issue. And then we go into the, you know, we grow up, you know, we focus on working, we focus on other assignments, and then we less enjoy life, we less enjoy human connections. And you've been meeting a lot of business leaders, you've been meeting a lot of companies and help companies to rebuild the culture. I would want to hear your side of the story. What happened to us?
So that's a really good question because I was talking to an academic from Croatia in
uh,
Europe maybe 6 months ago, and she's created a foundation called the Center for Authentic Leadership, right?
mm,
And they've done a lot of research into this. And if you can imagine, all all children around the world, and I've been to 30, nearly 40 countries, right? And as you said, 99.99% of human beings in every country want the two same things. We want to love and be loved.
mm,
99.9. There are people who are sick, there are some dangerous people, but 7.99 billion of the 8 billion people want to love and be loved
mm,
across every culture, right? But what happens is we're all born authentic. Children are authentic. If you
mm,
talk to a 5-year-old, they would tell you what they think. They would tell you how they feel. No, I'm hungry. And they would stamp their feet. No, I'm tired, right? What happens is in our 20s, during our schooling years, in our 20s and 30s, we lose that authentic self and we get sucked into the world of what I call expectation, right?
mm,
So we move from being authentic to living in a world of expectation. In other words, we become fearful, right?
mm,
So we worry about our career, we worry about not having enough money, we worry about pleasing our boss. And
mm,
so when you think about it, from about the age of 20 to about the age of 50, our authentic self is subsumed by this fear of expectation. And then
mm,
what happens around about the age of 50, and it seems to be the case around the world, and I'm 55 now, right? And we tend to kind of think, well, we're coming towards the end part of our life, and then we look back at our childhood and we think, being authentic was really good. I don't need to be fearful anymore. So we go from authentic to life of expectation, and we come back to this. And that's, I think, what happens. We spend our 20s and 30s rushing around, worrying about money, worrying about career. And when you think about it, it's a waste of time, really, because it's a waste of time. Fear is a waste of time. We do need it to an extent, but in this modern age, we get so sucked into this world of expectation. So I think that's what happens.
wow, thank you for sharing that. So the research show that, you know, when we're young we're authentic, and then, you know, when we get older, then we get into the life
Come back
expectation
again.
and then come back into that one. So it's
Yeah.
like the math. What is that, Vivian? I forgot the. Hello.
Yeah. What we said? Yeah, sorry.
No, no, don't worry. Simon, if that's the case, how can we help people to get back to the authenticity at earlier time instead of waiting to the years of 50 years old and then start to be authentic again? I want to be authentic at my age of 40, and I want to enjoy my 40 to 60 years old as I was, young, like the 5, 6 years old. Different expectation, different priorities. But yes, I want to be authentic. So how can we build that one up?
So I think we really need to work on awareness, right? And we need to, a lot of the work that I do is when I coach, I help people think about their own journey, right? Their own journey in life. And life goes fast, right? I mean, it's okay, 70, 80, 90 years if we're lucky sounds a long time, but it goes fast. And so I ask people to think about, project forward and think about what they would like out of life. And I asked my clients 4 questions, right? Because we have to be intentional about our journey. We really have to think about where we want to go. You mentioned that you're a dreamer. Okay, you're not a dreamer. You set a pathway and then you want to get there, right? So the first question I ask my clients is, if we were having this same conversation in 3 years' time, so if you and I were talking on the 13th of April, 2025, right? Let's just say that's the day we're recording. So if we were having the same conversation and you were looking back to today, right? What has had to have happened in your life, both personally and professionally, for you to say, I'm happy with what's happened over the last 3 years? So I ask people to look forward 3 years and then project back. And by doing that, it does allow people to think a little bit more about their journey. And then the second question is, what are the 3 biggest dangers within you that you would need to eliminate? The dangers that would stop you from succeeding. So for me, it would be, I need to say no more, right? Or I need to be more assertive, or I need to be less of a people pleaser. Then the third question is, what are the 3 biggest opportunities that you have, right? And then I show them the different types of strengths within them and ask them to look at their strengths. And the fourth question then is, what are the biggest strengths that you have, right? And most people don't realize their strengths, okay? So the process I take my clients on is a journey of forward projection and then map back today. And I don't know about you, but I was never taught that at school, right? And it doesn't mean don't live in the moment. You've got to live in the moment. But if you don't envisage your life, don't expect it to happen. You have to have plans, right? The other thing I work on is a lot of people, human beings tend to, unlike animals, we're quite lazy. Human beings are quite lazy, okay? And most human beings tend to do things only when the pain of not doing it becomes worse than the pain of doing it, if that makes sense. We tend to leave things to the last minute, okay? And so I say to my clients, how do you need to push your growth zone, right? So a lot of people live in what's called the comfort zone. It's easy to live in the comfort zone, full of fear and regrets and worries and not doing what we're doing now, getting onto online and talking to each other. Most people would be scared of doing this, okay? But if you're in that, you might feel safe and in control, but you're not creating that growth pathway. So I help my clients move from the comfort zone into what I call the fear zone, which is when you feel a bit nervous, before you come on something like this, you're thinking, oh, I hope the technology works, and I hope I look okay, and I hope I say the right things. That's a good thing when you feel nervous, right? And then we move into the learning zone. You realize, well, I can do this, right? I can acquire new skills. I can extend my comfort zone. And then finally, you go into the growth zone. You find a new purpose, and you're living new dreams, and you're conquering your objectives. So there's a process I take my clients through, and unless you go through that process, don't expect things to be easy. Life has to be, you have to be intentional about this growth journey. So it's a fascinating thing, and you have to be ready for it.
So we have to be intentional, on the growth journey that we are having, right?
Yeah.
Simon, I have a question like this because most of the things that business leaders have been doing in the past, we still have measurements in what we do, the growth, all the KPI to show the effectiveness of the organization. And then, but then with this COVID that hit, it looks like a lot of things that we did in the past now has changed to to what we call in this region of the world is that back to the basics. So everything is really back to the basic, connecting to the people at heart and things like
Yeah.
that. But that was not new. That was measured every single year. Back then, we had the engagement survey result. We had a lot of like result from corporations to get those in. So why did we as a leader forgot about that, or over or blind side about those indicators? uh,
I think that's a great question. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, about because I talk a lot about what I call 21st century leadership. And 21st century leadership is much more about authentic, vulnerable, human based leadership rather than the old sort of leadership, which was ego driven and was about stamping the table and lack of empathy, right? And so the world is definitely needs that. The reason why, and we've been talking about this for decades, right? The reason why most business leaders haven't really done this is because that a lot of business leaders are really busy. They're really busy, right? So when you're busy, you're full of fear as well, right? And also you're seeing results. So you're still getting revenue, right? And the risk is being managed, and the reputation's okay. And so human beings, why would they change and come back and be more empathetic and nicer when things are going okay? But what's happening now, the last few years, with the pandemic, and now the situation in Europe, in Ukraine, and climate change, and higher prices around the world, these are a lot of microeconomic factors that are making everybody. There's not one human being on this planet that is not aware of the pandemic. Every human being on this planet knows we're living through a pandemic, okay? That's connected all of us, and I think there's a higher, not in everybody, there's still going to be people who, there are still going to be silly people who still don't believe that we need to be better with each other. And as we've seen in politics, there are a lot of them. But I think people are realizing that we need to be more sensitive. We need to be more considerate. We need to demonstrate the key factors of 21st century leadership. So I do think some leaders, not all, are now realizing we need to slow down and do the things we've been thinking about for years. And I think, the pandemic, I say we went to bed in 2019 and we woke up in 2030, not 2020, because the pandemic has accelerated our desire to think differently, and climate change has, etc. So for me, 21st century leadership really means four things. I think we need to be thinking, we need to really ask ourselves, A, do I know myself? Do I really know my purpose? How self-aware I am? Number two, am I able to control myself? Can I self-regulate? Am I good at decision-making? Am I compassionate, calm, and courageous? Number three, am I really aware of others? Cross-culturally, ethically, etc. Number four, can I really work with others? Can I manage conflict? Can I collaborate? Can I negotiate? And number five, am I really prepared to grow myself? And Marshall Goldsmith, I'll just finish on this, talks about 21st century leaders as being facilitators rather than experts, right? And my spin on that would be, I posted on LinkedIn the other day that I think the best leaders today need to be facilitators and not dictators. In other words, remove your ego. You can still be smart, right? But if you put your ego aside and be a decent human being, funny enough, you'll have followers. And so I think that's the main reason. People have been too busy. People haven't had a circuit breaker to make them really stop and think. And I think a lot of people are now stopping to think.
Thank you so much for sharing the five things. Most of them are related to the EQ part of a human being.
Absolutely.
And plus the preparation to grow oneself, to get ready. And that preparation to grow, I think, is under a lot of challenging now also, Simon. Because the speed of change, the acceleration of change for generations working in corporations under the COVID situation has come out of control for organizations, out of measurement. I'm afraid that there might be further changing, further expectations that leaders need to absorb, need to know, need to learn, and they need to create, like you say, facilitating that change and make the environment for the employees to to really engage with the company, really build a culture that welcoming such thing. Is there any other things that leaders are concerned at the moment? Any sign of changing that they need to be aware that we can create that awareness for leaders, Simon?
I think there's four main things, right? So I think leaders really need to be, well, the first thing is a leader is only a leader if you have followers, okay? And so for me, I think a leader has to provide a bridge to the future, right? So leadership isn't just about today, right? It is about today, but good leaders are good influencers, good inspirers. And I'm not talking about negative, I'm not talking about unethical, I'm not talking about persuasion, I'm talking about influence, right? And so I think leaders need to be calm, open-minded, forward-thinking, and I think they need to be innovative-minded. And to be innovative, to be open to change and innovation is really the most important thing, because when you think about, and this is the core of 21st century leadership, there's so much competition in the world. We're all connected now. When I was a young child growing up in Europe, we hardly heard of China. We didn't hear of the Far East much, right? The world now is balanced, West and East, which is a wonderful thing, okay? But that means there's more competition, okay? And so to stand out, you need 21st century leadership. And the first challenge is, how do you as a leader create growth? If you don't create, because growth doesn't just happen, you have to create it, right? Like you can't become a lawyer unless you study law. You can't work teams unless you understand teams, right? So you have to grow a business, and so that's the first thing. But then to grow, you need to differentiate. You need to be different to your competitors. To differentiate, you need to innovate. To innovate, you need diversity of thought. You need different people, different skill sets from different places. And then for diversity, you need inclusion. So I think that's going to be more and more important, is for businesses to be as diverse and inclusive and aligned as possible. And I think the best leaders need to pay attention. And the 6 key aspects, I think, of inclusive decision making, which I think will become more important, are building relationships. Leaders need to help build relationships. They need to recognize the quietest person in the business. It's easy to recognize the loudest person, but how do you as a leader make sure the quietest person is noticed? They need to manage empathy and encourage empathy. They need to build trust. They need to encourage participation, and they need to ensure that there's alignment as much as possible. So I hate to say there's a lot of things for good leaders to do, right? But as I sum it up, it's about awareness. If you're aware that human beings need nurturing, that you need nurturing, that businesses need nurturing, then you do everything to ensure that you're feeding the revenue, risk, reputation. It's easier than people think, but you need to slow down and do these emotional intelligence things. Critically important.
So which leads to the next, the work that you do, Simon. So you and your companies are doing, like helping leaders to change, create a culture of changing and growth, right? And then the first thing you started, I noted in here, is about the mindset, and the second is a leadership capability. The third is a business capabilities, and then build their brain on top of that. So why everything started with the mindset though? Is that something that a leader already be equipped and already should be built already in their mechanism?
Well, we all have a mindset, okay, but how many of us really stop and think, how do I think, right? Not many people actually stop and think, how aware am I? How resilient am I? What is my capacity to cope in a crisis? How assertive am I? How can I influence people? When things get tough, how am I going to behave? Am I going to become fearful? And am I going to be calm? And so unless you get a sense of what makes up you, your emotions, your emotional intelligence, your resilience levels, your levels of grit, your levels of awareness, unless you get a sense of those, how can you really expect others to follow you, right? People tend to follow people who they believe in, right? And if you don't believe in yourself, people are going to feel that you don't believe in yourself. There's 2 types of leaders. There are leaders who operate through a script. You know, we see them, they read books and they read and they do all this sort of stuff. But I don't know about you, but I can sense in my gut that they don't really feel this. They're just saying it. I'm interested in the leaders who know it, but also feel it, right? And that's what I'm looking for in a good leader, right? So unless you do that work on yourself, how can you truly convince others, you know?
Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that. Vivian, yes.
Thanks. Yeah, I just have a curious question, maybe bringing back off topic a bit here. When you were 7 years old and you have a confidence that you become a lawyer, I was thinking about that when we were sharing. I think you have the courageous in mind to be representing for righteousness, even starting with a young age. Well, is that something that you have in mind back then? You need to protect something and the value that to grow up and become a lawyer at that age?
It's a very good point. And you're right? So the reason I watched that program and I was fascinated by that program was that they were defending just causes, right? And something in me from an early childhood said, I'm kind of interested in the underdog. I'm interested in how they get helped. I'm interested in ethics. I'm interested in the truth. I've always been interested in those things. And that's kind of what drives me, you know. And sometimes in my career, I'm not going to go into details, but I got into trouble, you know, because for me, honesty is paramount. It's the most important thing for human beings. If we're not honest, not just with others, but also with ourselves, we don't really have a real identity, right? And honesty is something that all human beings struggle with, right? We all struggle with being 100% honest. Have either of you been 100% honest in your lives? Probably not, because we're human beings, right? And so for me, I've had to really, really work hard. And some of this has come, I've had some traumas in my life, some difficult times in my life, in my family. And I've always had a strong, and I don't really know where it came from, but I've had a strong sense that justice is really important. And I remember when I was in Australia, I won't mention the company, but I could see a young Japanese female lawyer was not being treated very well. And I stood up for her, right? Even though I knew that it would cause me problems with the management team. For me, it was most important to stand up for the truth, you know. And so I think that's always been in me, you know. And I've had other situations where, you know, I've noticed in my career that people were doing unethical things. When I was a lawyer in-house for big corporations, in America, there's a law called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, right? Which means if you're an in-house lawyer or accountant and you find out that somebody in the company is doing something illegal, you have to raise it with the ethics committee. And I had a terrible conundrum one time where I realized that somebody in my business, my boss, was doing something dodgy. And for 24 hours, I thought to myself, should I report this or should I let it go, right? And if I'd let it go, I could have ended up a criminal, right? So I had a conundrum, but then if I reported it, my boss would have made my life difficult. And luckily for me, because I have that strong core of ethics, I reported it. And I think that is paramount. At the end of the day, we are all going to die, right? I have to say it, like, we're all going to die one day. And when you're on your deathbed, right, all you have is your reputation. You can't take money with you, right? You can't take, you can only sleep in one bed, right? And so all we have is our reputation. When you think about it, when you strip everything away, our reputation is so important. I'm getting very passionate about this because it's really important. And when you think about it, I'll finish on this. If you are 100% honest, or as honest as you can be, nobody can get at you. Nobody can, right? They might think they can. So honesty and ethics and the truth are paramount.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's very powerful. Yeah. Yeah. And Simon, I would want to bring you to the point that we talked earlier about being authenticity, and then we worry with expectations, and then, you know, when we get older, we go back to authenticity. Vivid and I are creating a program, and, you know, within the Inside Sharing, that we're gonna do a lot of video shooting related to the topic of happiness. And that's what we would launch to the, and toward the very end of April into May. And because of when I look around the people around us now, because of the pandemic, things are not happy, people are not happy. But I look before that, it's again, I see the same pattern. People still not really, really happy. But look at you, look at the people in the Master Goldsmith people that I've been interviewed to the show. We can see the authentic happiness from every single one of them. And Vivian and I really want to bring the secret sauce that what make you happy, so that at least in the future, if I meet somebody and say, hey, if you want to be happy, learn from Simon. This is his secret sauce of being happy. Or learn from Vivian or learn from her. So what is that that makes you maintaining happy, sustaining happiness, and creating the happiness around for the people next to you? How can you do that?
So I think, and it's interesting because this is the work that I do, right? So I when I work with my client, I'm not trying to make them happy, right? But I'm trying to show them that they can align as much as they possibly can to live a fulfilling life, right? For me, the core of happiness is feeling that you have a purpose and you know your purpose and you're passionate about your purpose, and other people can see your purpose, right? And I haven't always been like this, right? I mean, I love my work. As you can see, I love the work I do because, yes, I'm getting accolades, Thinkers 360 and Global Gurus and all of these things, and Marshall Goldsmith supported me. But it never used to be like that, right? And so what I used to be like, even up to about 4 years ago, I used to hide from the world, right? So there were two versions of me, right? There was the real version of me that I've mentioned to the two of you. I'm getting very deep here, right? You're very good at bringing these deep things out. So the real version of me was that little boy who was really passionate about truth and honesty and ethics, right? But for about 50 years of my life, I hid that from the world, and I covered it with the version of me that I wanted the world to see. And that was that expectation version based out of fear. And that version was Simon is this hotshot corporate executive, lawyer, stiff upper lip, doesn't show emotions, right? Little did I realize I was not happy, right? I was very sad because I wasn't being me. I wasn't living my purpose. I was covering my purpose, right? And so the last 3, 4, 5 years, I've shed that artificial version, and I'm just me, right? I say what I think. I do the work that I love doing. I help inspire people. So for me, it's about living your purpose. What is your purpose? And there's a really, really good book that I recommend to everybody, and it's called Into the Magic Shop. It's called Into the Magic Shop, and it's written by an American neurosurgeon, a brain surgeon called James Doty, D-O-T-Y. My favorite book. And he tells the story, and he had a similar background to me. I had family problems in my family. He had a broken family. His father was an alcoholic. And so he came from a broken family. True story. And he went into a magic shop in California in the 1960s. And this old lady could see something in him. She could see, as I think you kind of maybe could see in me, that I'm about honesty and ethics and purpose. She could see that in him, but he couldn't see it in himself. And she said to him, if you come back for 6 weeks, I'll teach you magic, right? And he did, and she didn't teach him magic, but she taught him the 4 key attributes of living a fulfilling, purpose-driven, happy life. And they are, the 2 first ones are easy, right? You need to find ways to relax your mind, to look after your mind. Our mind is a tool, right? We need to use it, and we need to be careful about it, and we need to nurture it, and we need to feed it positive thoughts and keep toxic thoughts out of it and nurture our mind, right? We need to protect our mind, right? Because our minds are plastic, they can become toxic and difficult, so we need to mind them. The second thing is we need to look after our bodies. We need to exercise, we need to eat good things, we need to drink lots of water, we need to mind ourselves, right? The fourth thing, I'll skip on the third thing, the fourth thing is, most people then think, right, I'm going to set my goals and my journey in life. But the crucial thing that 95% of people don't do, and that stops you, I think, from being happy, is get critically honest with yourself. Until you get totally honest with yourself about who you are and what you want to do and how you want people to regard you and how you want people to say when they're standing around on your deathbed, what do you want people to say about you at that point, right? Unless you do that, I think a lot of people are going to feel disconnected and not fully engaged in this life. And that is the key trait that people like Marshall Goldsmith and the people you've interviewed, everybody's been on this journey. We've got to a place in our lives where either through tragedy or trauma or something else, where we thought, right, what do I really want out of this life? What's my purpose in life? And for me, yes, I make money out of what I do, but my purpose is to help. My purpose is to gain knowledge and to help. And money can come in. My purpose is not to make money, right? If you're chasing money, you're not going to be happy, right? But if you're chasing a good purpose, the money will follow and you'll feel fulfilled. So it's getting honest with yourself and having a purpose. It's harder, though, when you're young. Because when you're young, you're wrapped up in fear and ego, and you've got to pay the bills and you've got to get a job. But what I try and demonstrate, and I do work with students and with the Royal College of Surgeons students over here in Ireland, is to demonstrate that they don't have to waste the time that I wasted. They can get closer to this than they think. So having a sense of purpose and getting honest are so important.
Wow, thank you so much, and I'm glad that you open, to share a lot of things that you didn't share before, and then you be able to share your artificial version of Simon, and start to
real
live
version.
really the life that you're really fulfilling. So congratulations on that. I have two questions, and then to end the show, one is the question that I promised my communication coach that I need to ask a bizarre question. Okay, and so the bizarre question I would like to ask you, Simon, is how's your day look like?
My day to day.
Yeah, every single day. What a typical day for you.
A typical day, well, I work for myself, right? So I actually have a home office. You can see me sitting in my home office. I'm quite disciplined. I get up about 7 o'clock. I have breakfast. My wife works at home and she goes to the office. And so I spend really from about 9 o'clock until about 6 o'clock working, right? And even though I'm in my house, I close the door and I'm in my office because I have to disconnect myself from the family, right? Because I have to remember we're lazy, so I have to force myself to do this, right? It's important to do this. And then I break my time into three components, right? Roughly speaking, they're kind of equal. I spend 30% of my time, maybe 50% of my time doing client work. So I'll do consulting, coaching, online on Zoom, or I'll go out and do it out in the public. Consulting, coaching, training. I do a lot of training on Zoom. So that's client work, 50%. And then the other 50%, I would probably spend 10% doing administration. And then the other 40% is I'm constantly writing and drafting programs, presentations. I've written 3 books, but I've got 3 more books coming. And so I kind of divide my day consciously into those 3 components. And I try and have meetings in the morning and do writing and creative stuff in the afternoon. And then in the evening, my wife comes back. We have dinner together. We go to the gym 3-4 days a week. She's probably better than I am at going to the gym. She'd go 4, I'd go 3. And I watch a bit of television. And I like to watch the news in the evening. And that's my day. I don't live an extravagant life. We have good holidays. But I'm passionate about what I do. So I like to divide it like that.
What's your wife's name?
Margaret.
Margaret. Hello? Simon?
Yes?
Is her name Margaret?
Margaret, yes.
Okay. Please tell her that we say thank you to, we say thank you to her that, she let you spend your 1 hour with Vivian and I and the audience with the show today, all right?
I will. And I'll tell her you're in Ho Chi Minh City because we had a fantastic holiday there. We loved it. And we found the people were very, very friendly. Although I have to say, my 2 daughters Catherine and Alice, they have very blonde hair. Their hair is like Cinderella, very blonde hair. And when we went to Ho Chi Minh City, we walked through there was a food market there. And because a lot of the locals hadn't seen really gold hair, they were coming up and they were wanting to touch her hair, you know. So my younger daughter has a bit of a fear of Ho Chi Minh City. But the people were so friendly.
Tell her that's a culture differences. So, you know, that's how our people in here, you know, really welcome and admiring the people.
Yeah, they were welcoming. Exactly. That's what they were doing. They were welcoming.
Okay. You already touched the last part of the question that I would like to ask is, you know, is there any exciting things that you are doing and you want to share with us and the audience? So you shared that there's 3 books you are about to release. And is there anything else, or maybe you can talk about that a little bit to end our discussion today?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I'm very busy with my branding company getting a new website put together, a very interactive website, which is going to be called Simon Haigh, the GCM Growth Group website. And on that we will have everything. So right now I have 2 or 3 different websites, and we're going to bring it all into one place. Okay. And on the website we will have all of my training programs, all of my coaching programs, all my e-learning programs, all of my podcasts, my radio stuff, my books, everything in one place. So everybody can see my whole universe, because right now it's all over the place. So that's being done. A media pack is being done. So the whole lot of stuff is being done. I'm also really pleased to announce today on LinkedIn that I'm going to be a keynote speaker at a conference in Milan, Italy in October, Fausto's conference, talking about 21st century leadership. And so they will be the 2 things I'd like to announce.
Wow, wonderful. And I think that the October one is very exciting. You know, I saw also Fausto already talked about that already. We congratulate you for all the amazing things that you've been doing. And then tell Catherine, tell Alex, tell Margaret that they should be very proud of you, Simon. So we really admire the work that you do. We really admire the warmth and the kindness that you bring to us today and to the audience. And then the authenticity, also the importance of being authentic in the world today. So thank you so much for joining our program. We wish you and your family all the best. And like we said earlier, if you and your family come back to Vietnam, we would love to bring the 4 of you out. And at this time, I make sure that I talk to the local. Don't touch Catherine's hair, and then they can ask but don't touch. So then
they can ask but not touch. Exactly.
Yes, so the fear from the past will no longer existing to tell her that. All right. So we will work with her on that.
No, it's been a pleasure, and the 2 of you have an amazing ability in your questions to get to know the person. You got to know me when you talked about that drive, particularly Vivian, when you talked about what was in me as a child. Nobody has ever asked me that before. So you have a really good ability to do that. That was wonderful.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Wish you all the best.
Wish you all the best. You have a nice day there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.